Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Triple Play, that podcast where we get hit by a car, because this month we watched Insidious.
Written by Lee Wannell and James Wan.
Directed by James Wan and Lee Wannell.
And released in 2011, 2013, and 2015.
Yeah, so we usually start with how many times we've watched these, and for me it's never.
Yeah, never.
Never watched these before. Horror's like not typically a genre I watch.
Yeah, I've barely watched any horror movies.
Just because, I don't know, I'm not really... A lot of horror movies nowadays are like a lot of blood and guts and gore, which is like not my thing. So...
That's why Get Out was so good.
Yeah, like I actually like horror movies that aren't blood and guts and gore, like that are more, I guess... Creepy and heady, like these movies kind of try to be. Which is why I'm never gonna watch Saw, because that's a big no thank you for me. And I think that's actually like a pretty surprisingly good segue into how this movie, how James Wan came up with the concept for this movie, because if you didn't know, James Wan and Lee Wannell actually did create the Saw franchise.
Yeah.
They created the first Saw movie, and James Wan directed the first one. The first one was the only one that James Wan actually directed.
And was really involved with.
Mm-hmm.
Lee Wannell was, I think he supervised and wrote some of the other ones.
I think he wrote, for sure I know he wrote the second one. I don't know if he wrote any beyond the second one.
Pretty sure his name was attached to all of them.
I think both of their names were attached to all of them, just as producers.
Yeah, which probably just means that they created the first one and they had to put their name on it somehow.
I mean, some producers get, like, really involved in the movies they're producing and, like, actually read over the script and, like, approve budgetary things and make sure that everything is good. But some producers are, like, just there in name only to just have their name on it.
Yeah, and I mean, if someone's getting credited as, like, creative supervisor or creative producer, then you can probably bet that they didn't really do anything.
Yeah, I mean, if you're getting credited as a title that was probably made up for your position on that movie, then you probably didn't do anything. And that's why, like, whenever I see a trailer for a movie or a poster that's like, from the producer of this other much better, more well-known movie, I'm like, okay, but, like, did the producer really have any effect on this movie?
Based on an idea I overheard from the producer of blank movie.
That's like a joke my dad and I have when we watch movies that are like based on real events, but they're like really obscure. Real life events was like based on a footnote I read in a textbook in a library 5 years ago. But like, yeah, so James Wan and Lee Wannell like created the first Saw movie, which apparently doesn't have a lot of violence like at all. Apparently it has barely any compared to the later ones. But at the same time,
maybe we should go back to how they created the first Saw movie.
Yeah,
well, because I mean, I don't know how true this is or how much it is just Lee Wannell and James Wan just looking back and hindsighting it. But apparently they came up with several horror movie ideas when they were, because they both went to school together, film school in Australia. Mm-hmm. Apparently that's where they came up with a couple different horror movie ideas. You know, one was Saw, one was Paranormal Activity. Mm-hmm. Which they weren't, I think, necessarily involved with. But the studio that helped, one of the studios that helped on Paranormal Activity also contributed to Insidious.
Yeah, which I'm going to get to later because that's actually an interesting thing to talk about.
But yeah, they sort of had these ideas floating around since then, and I guess they just went and made it.
Yeah, well, so the thing is that, I don't know, I think Saw is actually like an interesting idea for a movie, the first one anyway.
Yeah, one of the only movies whose title is a verb. No, Saw. No.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like a lot of movies have titles that are verbs.
No, plus Saw is also like, Saw isn't like...
Yeah, it's just like a bandsaw, like a noun. It's also a noun. But like the concept for the first Saw is like, I think pretty interesting. It's like just two guys stuck in a room and like some serial killer has trapped them there and they've got to do things...
Play a game.
To like escape that involve... You got to self-harm basically to escape the room. Which I think is like a pretty good idea. But then like, it basically turned it into torture porn by the third movie. And
one where she has to swim through a pool of used syringes.
Great! I mean, I'll give the franchise credit for somehow continuing to come up with creative traps 8 movies later. They somehow
I
dragged
think there's
that.
only 7. There's only 7.
No, they made an 8th one like this year
Oh,
in
yeah,
27.
Jigsaw,
Well, it's
right,
2018
yeah.
when this comes out, but in 2017 they made an 8th movie.
Jigsaw, it's not Saw, it's actually Jigsaw.
Yeah, and they ruined the entire naming scheme of the franchise by naming it Jigsaw.
No, the 7th one ruined it by calling it like Saw,
Saw
3D,
3D?
the last Saw movie or whatever.
But at
it was
least
called.
it was just called Saw something. Jigsaw.
Yeah, this one's Jigsaw.
It's Jigsaw.
Anyway, enough about that. We're gonna watch the Saw movies probably at a later time.
We'll leave that to like way at the end of the podcast because those are the movies that I want to watch.
Implying
Like
this
least.
podcast is ever gonna end.
Those are like the movies out of every trilogy we could choose. I want to watch the least. So, yes, James Wan looked at like because the Saw movies actually started this like trend in horror that to be scary you had to be super violent and bloody, like I said earlier. And James Wan like wanted to show that. Like in the 80s and 70s, you didn't have to be bloody and violent and hard R-rated to be scary.
Yeah, you could just have a budget of, a couple dollars and, your props of toilet paper and a mop and...
What is this, Doctor Who? So he was like, yeah, so I wanted to like really go back to like the roots of like original OG horror, which was like trying to be really creepy and mysterious and like a proper haunted house style horror movie, and that's what Insidious was trying to be. So he called up his old
That's what
buddy.
Insidious was trying to be.
He called up his old buddy Lee Wannell, and they got together and they wrote the script, and they were like, "Heck yeah, it's gonna be great."
Yeah, apparently in one of the interviews with James Wan I read, he's like, we're really, really throwing a twist on the haunted house subgenre here. This takes place in 2 houses.
Yeah, I think I read that same
I
interview.
was like, yeah, great twist there, great twist.
Well, because what James Wan was trying to do was what he said he was trying to do was he was trying to like make a movie that would be considered like an homage to like those old haunted house movies, but that had like a new spin on the story. So like the old haunted house horror movies would be like, oh, the house would be haunted and the house would be haunting them, but the spin in this movie is that like they move houses but they're still being haunted because it's not actually their house that's haunting them.
Yeah,
the
no,
kid.
it was kind of cool. I was making a joke out of it, but yeah, the one thing that sort of ties into the paying homage thing that I read this is something I really liked that James Wan said. Not that I think what the creator says should really be taken into account too much when you look at the actual movies themselves, but I really liked how he was like, you know what, screw sequels. I don't want to go down that route. I want to just sort of incorporate these ideas from these movies that I loved like as a kid. And then like do my own thing with them, go a new direction with them, create something new rather than just churn out sequel after sequel after sequel. And this is back in like 2010, before sequels even got to be such a big problem.
I mean, unless you count the Fast and the Furious franchise, which even in 2010 was already up to like 5 movies, at least.
Well, yeah, I said sequel. I actually meant reboot. Well, I guess I meant sequel too.
Yeah, because I think he
reboot
talked
as
about
well.
sequels and reboots, and Insidious 2 was actually the first like sequel that James Wan actually directed.
Yeah, which I mean, I think Insidious 2 is actually a good sequel. I guess we'll get into that a little later in this episode.
But yeah, so Lee Wannell, while we were watching these movies, I called him Lay because that's how I thought his name was pronounced. But while looking up information for this episode, I found out it's actually pronounced Lee.
Yeah, it's Lee.
So that was interesting. I found it on a forum thread where people were talking about celebrities' names that they constantly mispronounced because they had never heard it said out loud. Like Alan Tudyk. Tudyk. It's a really difficult one to pronounce. Anyway, so the first Insidious was made on like a really low budget because James Wan basically wanted to go back to like indie movie making. He's like, I want to go back and I just want to make like a small scale sort of thing with a lot of practical effects that doesn't use a lot of CG as a crutch. So a lot of the stuff that happens in the
really
movie
came through in that seance scene with the strobe lights. Really great scene there.
I mean, I think James Wan did like a pretty good job of hiding a lot of the practical effects that they used.
All right, the demon looked pretty cool. I mean, I'm pretty sure there was some CG on the demon. The demon looked pretty cool.
Yeah, he was. I read an interview where
He
was
was the demon was played by the composer
yeah, yeah.
Joe Bishara or whatever his name was.
They used like a lot of budget saving techniques on the first movie like that because Jason Blum, head of Blumhouse Productions, was like, yeah, we really wanted to like save as much money as possible, and we wanted to make this on a smaller budget as possible.
I read that after Paranormal Activity, they really went after that low budget, high return model.
Yeah, and like the interesting thing about it, which I actually wanted to talk about, is that Blumhouse has actually like been really successful at low budget horror movies and getting like a huge return on investment on low budget horror movies. It's kind of like a weird story in Hollywood where they're, instead of going really big budget like every other studio, they're like, we're gonna go like really small budget, really character driven, self-contained movies that are like just good.
Now, self-contained, Insidious too. But,
I mean, yeah, but like just in the past year they released Get Out and Split, both of which were made for basically pennies on the dollar and had huge returns on investment. As well as a movie called Happy Death Day, which I didn't see, although I saw the other two.
I watched the trailer for that. It looks hilarious.
Yeah, apparently that had a huge return on investment too. So like Blumhouse has kind of carved out this niche in Hollywood where they make low budget, high profit movies, and that kind of started with Insidious and Paranormal Activity to an extent.
Yeah. Which is a good thing. I guess.
I mean, it's good in the context that I think you need a variety of movies like that. I think it's better. I think we get better movies when we have a variety of different philosophies behind making the movie, in my opinion.
Well, this is something that James Wan and Lee Wannell said in an interview with them. Mm-hmm. And people can agree with this however much they want, but one of the things that they said is that movies with lower budgets actually allow you to do more than movies with higher budgets.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know how accurate this analogy is, but they gave this analogy, I think Lee Wannell did, of someone saying, like, write a 5-page story about anything, and then, like, you just don't know what to do. Somehow it makes you feel more constrained than if someone were to say, write a 5-page story about a scuba diver. And he says, if someone says that, all of a sudden you have a lot more possibility opened up to you. Which I don't really know what that means. I don't know whether or not it's true. I don't even know whether or not I agree with it. But yeah, that's, I think, that's what they said. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think Bloom said something similar. He said something along the lines of like, oh, you have to be a lot more creative when you have a low budget like this because, you have to think constrained rather than just thinking of every possible thing you could do and then just doing it. When you have such a low budget, you have to think about what you actually really want to do, and you have to make sure that that's what you actually want in the movie, because we don't have the budget to like mess it up or do two different things and see which works best. You actually have to consider what's going to be in the movie. This
actually made me think of something that's semi-related, but I think it's actually pretty interesting. Mario, the character Mario, was designed to have a mustache due to like technical limitations. They're like, all right, it's just easier to have a pixelated mustache rather than a mouth, and that turned into one of the most iconic designs. So yeah, maybe limitations can really just be freeing sometimes.
I mean, yeah, and this is also related to video games, but I was listening to another podcast and they were talking about that new game, Death Stranding by
Kojima.
Yeah, Kojima. And
he shills himself more than James Wan does in his credits.
Well,
directed by Kojima.
James Wan didn't shill himself. It was Lee Wannell who was shilling himself.
No,
in those
it was
credits.
James Wan who was shilling himself a lot in 1 and 2.
Well, okay, in 1 and 2. In the third one, it was all Lee Wannell.
Well, because James Wan was just an actor in the third one.
But yeah, because the podcast I was listening to was talking about like they were worried that because Kojima got.
Because Sony just gave him $20 billion to do whatever he wants.
Yeah, because Sony basically just gave him free reign to do whatever, and they're worried that like maybe he's gonna go too big, too fast, and he's not gonna produce like a good product, which is kind of related to this because a lot of his
he's produced a good game since Metal Gear Solid 2. What? Who said that?
Well, because like a lot of his earlier games were like made on like a lot smaller budget, so he had to do a lot more with a lot less.
Well, that's actually interesting. I just thought of this, and I didn't make this connection until now. The very first Metal Gear game in the 80s was turned into it was originally like an action game, but they couldn't get it working with the amount of bullets on the screen that they wanted. Mm-hmm. So they just turned it into a stealth game. and that became like the stealth game.
Yeah. It's like you gotta work within your constraints, and sometimes that leads to a spark of genius, I guess. But anyway, yeah, so Insidious 1, casting was, I guess they just found whoever would work for really low money.
James Wan was really going off about like how great this cast was. He's like, I got who I wanted. I got these stars, and the main guy, I don't even know his name.
Patrick Wilson, I think.
Patrick Wilson. He was in something pretty big, I think around 2010. But then I think like the biggest credit that the mom character had,
Rose Byrne, I think is how you say
it was on some TV show that I'd never even heard of. But she was the acting in the first one wasn't really that great, and I think she was the worst.
Yeah, it was weird because like listening to James Wan or reading about James Wan tout the acting merits of the cast is like, I mean, yeah, if I look only at the second movie, I can see what you're talking about, but like the first movie, like,
There's actually a huge improvement between the first and the second one, like a pretty impressive improvement from most of the actors.
Yeah. Like, if we had the acting in the second movie and the first movie, I think the first movie would probably be maybe better than the second one, in my opinion, although I don't know. That's something we can talk about at the end.
I like the second one more, but I did like the sort of simple and just straightforward story of the first one. But we'll get into that.
Yeah.
The first one had the demon, too. Then again, so did the third one. For like half a second. Anyway, yeah, they released the movie.
Well, so the music... I was reading about this. It was interesting.
Talking about the music.
Yeah, the music in the first one
siren.
There was an air raid siren in the first movie, but I couldn't find anything about the composer saying they actually used an air raid siren. Although I did read the composer was talking about how like the score was basically recorded with just a quartet and a piano, and then that was like the only people they had performing on the score. It was like really pared back and as minimal as possible. Once again, that whole low-budget filmmaking thing. You don't have budget to rent out the London Symphony Orchestra like Star Wars does. But apparently, he also had... This is so weird to me, but I guess it's kind of interesting. He had like a piano, but like it was a rusted-out piano shell. It was like rusted, and the one day, him and his buddy just took it into the studio and just started hitting it and scraping it with random garden tools and tools they picked up from like Home Depot just to get some really interesting noises for them to mix into the.
Well, that's how Beethoven did it. No, I'm just kidding.
into the composition, into the
cool.
score, which I thought was kind of neat. It kind of reminds me of what Hans Zimmer did for the Sherlock Holmes movie, where he took a piano and basically intentionally detuned it a lot and then just started smashing it with things. Sure. That wasn't a rusted out piano case. That was an actual piano where he started smashing the strings with random garbage.
Sherlock Holmes, like the Robert Downey Jr. ones.
Yeah, those ones.
Those are pretty terrible.
I've only seen the first one. I enjoyed it.
Another cool thing about the soundtrack is I think James Wan was the one who decided this. It's probably also related to budget. But in the movie, that you see a lot of people running past in the background, ghosts and sort of things like that. And one of the decisions they made was not to have any accompanying soundtrack to those moments. Normally, apparently, I don't watch many horror movies, but according to James Wan, normally you'd have some sort of musical cue along with things like that. But he's like, nah, it's actually more creepy if it's just something you see out of the corner of your eye and makes you sort of question, like, wait, did I even see that at all? Mm-hmm. Something like that. I don't really know if that's true. I think it might have actually been more scary with the accompanying music. But, yeah.
Yeah, the composer talked a lot about how they spent a lot of time deciding when and where to put silence in the movie because they felt like you had to use silence effectively in the movie because otherwise it's just it's useless.
I think that's true. I don't know how much they actually succeeded with that, but...
I mean, they could have just gone full silence like the movie Mother did, which had no score at all, which I didn't even notice till the movie was over, and I was like, wow, that's kind of annoying. Could have done with some background music, TBH.
What's that movie that has a constant drum beat for the entire time?
I have no idea. That sounds kind of irritating.
Apparently, I haven't seen it, but apparently people were like, yeah, I didn't even notice it until it stopped at the end of the movie.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me, to be honest. Kind of what I would expect, actually.
Yeah, it's like how, in this room right now, you can hear the drone of the lights, but, if it were to stop, you'd notice it.
or the times when we have a cricket on the recording, we don't notice it until the end of the episode when if the cricket suddenly stops and we're like, wait a minute, was that cricket on the whole episode? Anyway, yeah, so the first one came out, and the second one, basically Jason Blum was like, the first one was like pretty successful, and we wanted to do a second one, but we weren't going to do a second one at first unless James Wan and Lee Wan were going to come back and do the second one themselves.
Probably a good choice.
Which was really difficult for James Wan because he went on after Insidious immediately to direct The Conjuring.
Yeah.
Which also stars Patrick Wilson.
God.
Yeah, these two movies and The Conjuring forged this, I guess, friendship between Patrick Wilson and James Wan. Like, directors typically have, like, actors that they go back to a lot and use quite often. Like, Christopher Nolan uses Tom Hardy in a lot of his movies, things like that. So, James Wan and Patrick Wilson.
All right.
Or, like, Tim Burton always uses Johnny Depp in, like, every movie he's directed.
Should probably change that because Johnny Depp doesn't really act anymore.
Yeah, he just shows up and just dicks around on camera and then leaves. Anyway,
we didn't mention that the first one was shot in LA, I think, in a studio.
Yeah.
I think it was actually just stock footage that they used of the house. I was making a joke about it while we were watching this, but, come to think of it, looking back, I think it actually was just, a stock panning shot of a suburban house.
Low budget filmmaking.
But anyway, the second one was also shot in LA, after I think they started shooting in, 2012. Yeah, I read this blog about how, they were shooting this movie in the neighborhood, and the guy was like, turns out it's actually Insidious 2 that they're shooting down the street. he took a picture of the security guy at night. He's like, this guy hasn't made, and all his job is just sit here all night and just do whatever he wants, be on his phone, read magazines, whatever.
I mean, I guess he's got to make sure people don't break into the movie set, I guess.
Yeah.
People really gonna break into
instead of Insidious 2. Also, it's just a residential house, so if you break into the set, you just break into the house. I'm pretty sure no one was living there, but yeah.
Yeah, James Wan talked about how let me try that again. James Wan talked about how the first movie was like an homage to like old haunted house horror movies. The second one he was trying to make like a domestic killer kind of movie. Like,
I don't know how well that turned out. The second one was the first sequel that James Wan ever made. He said he felt okay with making this as a sequel because he really liked the characters, felt attached to them. And, the characters weren't that interesting in these movies, but, I really liked them, following them through 2 movies, and Elise and Specs and Tucker through 3.
Yeah.
I was kind of attached to the characters by the end. I really liked them.
Carl was the best character, but,
Yeah, Carl was cool. I liked all of them, honestly. I thought they did a pretty good job with the characters, surprisingly enough.
Yeah.
If you asked me within the first 30 minutes of the first movie these characters were going to be good and memorable and enjoyable, I would have said, yeah, hell no. But, in hindsight, I really liked them.
Yeah. No, I think they did a pretty good job of actually making you care about most of the characters. I don't know if I care about that teenage girl in the third one.
Yeah, the third one was kind of an outlier there, maybe except for Elise.
Elise and Specs and Tucker, and Carl showing up randomly for that obligatory
1 minute
cameo.
Scene.
James Wan also said he felt okay making the second one because he felt like it was the same movie as the first one, and
yeah, I don't know about that.
When both of the movies are like one movie, Insidious, but he ran out of money making it, so he just released the first part as Insidious, and the second part is Insidious Chapter 2.
I read that too, but yeah, I don't agree with that. I don't think they flow into one movie at all. The second one is pretty, not clearly, but it feels really sequel-ish.
Yeah, the second one's a lot different than the first one, but I can see where James Wan is coming from in how he feels like the characters evolved over the whole thing and how it feels like one story for the characters.
I mean, it is one story. It's one continuous story. It follows the same family. It picks up right where the other one left off, pretty much minutes after the
actually it
one.
starts with that flashback to young Elise.
Okay, well, whatever.
Who actually is a different actress, I confirmed.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure when I was watching them if old Elise was just a young actress in old makeup or if They
No,
got a
no, it was
new
Lin
actress
Shaye.
to play young Elise, and they actually did get a new actress to play young Elise.
Yeah.
So yeah, the second one did a lot of also interesting things with time travel, I guess. At least mentioned in the first one that time in the further works differently than in the real world, so I guess it makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, kind of dumb, but once you watch the third one, it just doesn't compare to any of the dumb things in the third one. So you're more okay with it.
We're not at the third one yet. Just hang on.
We're going to get there in a minute because there's almost no interesting stories about the making of the second and third movies.
Well, this is kind of just an anecdote that Patrick Wilson was talking about, because this was actually, I found out, Patrick Wilson did like an interview talking about Insidious 3, if there would be one or not. And he was talking about how it was weird that he became like this at the time in when did the second one come out? 2013. How in 2013 he kind of accidentally became this typecast horror actor because of Insidious 1, and then Conjuring. The first Conjuring apparently tested so well with test audiences that they moved its release date back from winter to summer to try to get a bigger box office return, and because of that, it ended up coming out around the same time as Insidious 2, even though Insidious 2 was filmed after The Conjuring, like, by quite a bit. So he was like, yeah, it's kind of weird how accidentally this year I'm just like the big horror actor for the year, even though like I don't really like horror myself, at least not the like current horror. He has a lot of the same thoughts as James Wan on horror. He doesn't really like the gory stuff, and he said that the reason why he accepted the Insidious roles was because he liked the fact that it was more of an old school character driven horror movie rather than like a new gory violent one.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I didn't look much up about the actors, but seems like they all got really good between the first and the second one, like a noticeable improvement. So I don't really know the story behind that, or if there even is one, but yeah, it's just people getting better at what they do, which is a good thing.
Yeah. It's good to be good at your job, I guess. But yeah, I mean, that segues kind of into the third one. Patrick Wilson said he probably wouldn't come back for a third one because he felt like the second one wrapped up the story.
Wrapped up his character's story pretty well, actually. The second one could have just ended with the scene where he closes his eyes, but then they had to sequel bait it with Elise.
Yeah, they did that really. They appended on that weird scene that's like clearly sequel bait, and so it makes sense that like, yeah, Patrick Wilson and the rest of the family wouldn't come back for a sequel because like the sequel bait didn't involve their family at all. But then it's kind of weird that the third movie didn't pick up that sequel bait and actually like follow through with it. They decided to do like a prequel,
and the fourth one isn't picking that up either. The fourth one takes place between the third one and the first one.
So that's like a really
Still
weird
open
decision.
for Insidious 5.
And I couldn't find like any reason why they did that.
Well, the third one was directed by Lee Wannell. It's his first time. It was his first directing credit. His first time directing a movie. And kind of didn't work out as well as the first two. So the third one follows a completely new set of characters, except for a couple, Elise, Specs and Tucker,
and Carl.
But they're so differently written, and it's a prequel that the fact that it's a prequel and the fact that they're so differently written kind of makes them seem like different characters to begin with.
Yeah, the third one's like really weird and kind of disconnected. They like try to tie it into the first two by shoehorning
haunted by the demon.
Yeah, by shoehorning in the fact that Elise is like haunted by the old lady demon that also haunted Jason in the first two movies.
Yeah, the only real interesting thing that I could find about the third one is that Lee Wannell had pretty much all the cast, not sure about the crew, but all the cast at least, watch The Shining, which is interesting because it's the third one is the least Shining-like of the three and has the most jump scares of the three. Shining actually does have like 2 jump scares, but whatever. They're good jump scares because they're just a guy with an axe.
The third one, the weird thing about the third one is that like you can actually tell it's directed by a different person than the first two.
You can. I don't think that's weird, though.
Well, I think it's weird because I think it also feels like the third one was like trying to mold itself to be similar to the first two and just failing. Because the first two had this like kind of weird dreamlike quality to them, at least to me. They feel like really out of body experience, like in the way that they're edited and shot.
That happens in the movie. So,
Well, yeah. And then the third one is like it feels like almost like a sitcom.
yeah, it kind of does. The characters were a lot less tight. It seemed like, I don't know, they just didn't know what they were doing with the characters, because the first one had the family, and then the had Elise and Specs and Tucker, and they all worked together at the end. The third one had the friends who kind of just bug off, have the neighbors who just sort of also bug off for the after their importance is over, they're just kind of not in the movie anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, say what you will about James Wan in the second one trying to make like a domestic killer movie, but at least when he made his first two movies, he had like a clear direction that he was trying to homage to with the movies that he was trying to make with the movies. Like the third one doesn't feel like they have any clear kind of genre that they're trying to fit into, which is fine. But like, it just feels out of place because of that.
Well, Lee Wan obviously had a direction, as all directors do. I mean, it's in the word, like, director. He had them watch The Shining, so there's something. He didn't, he just say, watch The Shining, whatever. And it doesn't have anything to do with the movie. Just do it. I just want to make you do it. Just want to use my role as director to force you to do things. But whether any of that came through on screen is a different story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's always important to just, actually watch the movie and see what's actually in the movie itself, rather than like, oh yeah, the director was trying to do that. I guess I can see that. Yeah, they were trying. Haha, yeah.
I mean, having watched the movie, I think I can say that whatever he was trying to do didn't come across, because I can't tell you what he was trying to do.
Nah, I don't know.
I just feel like if you can't
enjoyable.
I feel like if you can't tell what they were trying to do, then they for sure failed at doing whatever they were trying to do.
I guess, like I've already mentioned many times on this podcast, and I think also Trust Your Doctor, I don't think it really matters what the creators were trying to do.
I mean, whether it matters or not is irrelevant to whether you can tell what they were trying to do or not, right?
Not really, because whether you even look for things related to the creators in the movie is related to that.
I guess.
Yeah, that's probably a discussion whose stupidity far exceeds the scope of this podcast.
I don't know. We've talked about some pretty dumb things on this podcast before.
Anyway, yeah, they were all pretty big successes.
Yeah, they made quite a bit of money, which is why they're making a fourth one, which we're going to be watching next month for the 0.5. So,
well, I mean, it's either that or maybe the first Saw. But then again, we're probably going to watch the Saw movies together.
Yeah, so I guess we're watching Insidious: The Lost Key. The first one, they actually have like a subtitle.
Yeah, the first one to break the naming scheme. I watched the trailer for it. It honestly seems better than the third one. But you never know, you never know till you actually watch the movie yourself.
Yeah, James Wan makes a cameo appearance in the third one as an acting director. Lee Wannell shows up in the third one as well because he plays Specs.
He's in all of them. He's Specs.
Yeah, I was reading an interview of the first one, James Wan again talking about cost-saving measures, and they're like, yeah, so cost the writer of the movie in the movie, and James Wan's like, yeah, good way to save money, that costing the writer of the movie in the movie. Lee Wannell's actually also in the first Saw, another budget-saving movie, because the first Saw was also actually a low-budget movie.
Yeah. He does a pretty good job.
Yeah. He does a pretty good job as an actor.
Yeah. That's what I meant. Anyway, how well did these work as a trilogy?
The first two work pretty well.
Pretty well. The third one, actually, I thought the third one worked decently well. Also, how it sort of, if you've watched the first two, you know what's going on behind the scenes with Elise being haunted, and they tie into it at the end with the ghost. I just don't see... I mean, if you're going to watch these as a trilogy and just discard the fourth one, which is what we did, because the fourth one's not out yet... You should probably just watch the third one first. Normally I'm in favor of going, in release order rather than chronological, but I think the third one works better as the first one here. One, because it's the worst movie. And there's more mystery in the third one if you don't know what's going on. With Elise, that is.
Yeah.
And then you segue into the first one. The first half of the movie isn't even about Elise and Specs and Tucker, so you're like, I wonder what's going on here. And then they show up in the middle, and you're like, oh, great, it's those characters from the third one. And then they're actually better characters, so, it all just works out.
Yeah, that's actually something I was thinking like as soon as we finished watching the third one. I was like, man, kind of wish we watched this one first because then it would have established a lot of mystery that would have been resolved in the first and second one. Because watching the third is kind of underwhelming because a lot of the things the third one like sets up are already resolved in the first and second one. And if you've watched the first and the second one first, then you already know.
Yeah,
You already know.
yeah. I read Lee Wannell was like, yeah, we want to take the third one in a new direction. We want to really go with a standalone story for this one. Make it really stand out and just have it be its own movie that you don't have to watch another movie for to enjoy. Which I guess that's true. But yeah.
Yeah, the only way that I could see that, like, failing, I guess, and maybe putting the fourth one in between the third and the first one and watching them a 3, 4, 1, 2 will help, is that because Specs and Tucker only show up right at the end of the third movie and then only show up again right at the end of the first movie.
Yeah, 3/4 of the way. They showed up like halfway through the first one.
I mean, but still, the only thing is that, like, by watching the third one first, you're kind of constructing this trilogy around at least Specs and Tucker, so the fact that they barely show up for most of the third and first one might be a problem.
I think, to me at least, and people I guess would have different opinions about this. Wow, people would have different opinions. That's
Wow.
insightful. No, in my opinion, it actually works better because you have these three characters who the movie I guess sort of follows, and hints that it's going to be following these characters at the end when they form their own agency, and then you sort of you go into something else. You're like, wait, what's going on here? Where are these other characters? Why is it revolving around this family now? And then they show up midway through the movie, and you're like, oh yeah, it's Specs and Tucker.
Yeah.
Apparently people hated Specs and Tucker. I thought they were the best characters in the movie.
I mean, it's all about Carl, let's be honest.
Yeah, Carl was pretty great too.
Carl and his magic dice, who they kept alive in the second one because they were probably going to use him in the sequel-baited third one that didn't happen.
Hey, they're keeping it open for Insidious 5, okay? Just gotta wait a couple years.
And then they brought back Carl in the third one anyway and kind of introduced like a minor plot hole because Carl in the second one was like, I haven't talked to Elise in years.
No, it's not really a plot hole. It's just he hasn't talked to Elise in like 2 or 3 years. It's still years, just like 2 or 3 years.
I mean, you're really like stretching it. I feel like you're really stretching it there. And that like just means they can't put Carl in the fourth one, and we all like, the movie's not good.
Maybe it's just
Carl.
like 1.5 years.
Maybe Carl's just melodramatic. And it's like, I haven't talked to you in years, and it's really been like 2 weeks.
Maybe Carl is just going insane in his old age.
They should honestly just make a spin-off movie about why Carl got out of the business. Because I think there's like a pretty interesting story to be told about why Carl and Elise aren't working together anymore. Like in the third one, Elise clearly isn't doing this anymore, and Carl doesn't seem to be doing it either. Like I think there could be a pretty interesting movie about Elise and Carl getting out of the business.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, the third one kind of set up the thing about Elise's husband, so that was kind of lame. Yeah, they could have just done something with Carl. But, oh well.
Oh well, I mean, I guess we'll never know. Unless they make that movie about Elise and Carl. Use those young actors. Come on, you want to, Blumhouse. This is $1 million idea.
Pretty sure if they made $1 million on an Insidious movie, it would be considered a failure.
I mean, yeah, now that they're making like $100 million on these movies. But I mean, the well's gonna run out at some point, right?
And one day that Insidious bubble is gonna burst. Can't wait for that superhero bubble to burst.
Yeah, don't keep dreaming. James Wan just directed Aquaman, which doesn't come out till December of 2018.
Yeah, maybe that'll be good.
Yeah, I think it'll be pretty good because James Wan seems like a pretty competent director who knows how to actually like make a good movie.
Yeah, watch the trailer for the new Avengers. That was pretty terrible.
That's like your opinion, man.
Yeah, my right opinion, my objectively 100% correct opinion. Anyway, I almost said further Insidious material unintentionally, but other Insidious material, there is none.
Yeah.
There's the fourth one, which is coming out soon.
They could like make a comic book about Elise, Specs, and Tucker investigating things if they really wanted to try beat the dead horse there.
I don't think Insidious is a dead horse. The fourth one actually looks kind of cool.
No, but they will be beating the dead horse if they make a comic book because it's just like,
Maybe they'll just be
why?
killing the horse with the comic book, and any other material would just be beating it.
Will they make a fifth one? I guess we'll have to wait to
Probably.
see
They're
if,
probably
if
gonna make.
people actually watch the fourth one.
I mean,
They've made
I'm
like
going
what
to
6 Paranormal Activity movies?
4, I think.
I'm pretty sure
Possibly
it's 5 actually.
Possibly 5.
And they're making like a Conjuring cinematic universe.
God.
Apparently James Wan's The Conjuring was so successful that they had to make a second one, plus then a movie about the doll, plus then a movie about how the doll got created. That's 4 movies already. Plus they've got Conjuring 3 and one about the nun in development. That's like a 6-movie franchise right there.
Paranormal Activity was pretty successful. I read during researching what little research I did for this episode that Paranormal Activity's budget was $15,000 and it made $200 million. So that's like 13,000 times return on investment. Yeah.
Hey, I mean, if I was like Blumhouse, I'd be pretty
dancing
happy.
through the streets.
Yeah.
I read the story about how one of Juan and Wannell's professors in college in Australia was like, yeah, no one going to the school is going to be successful. Like, yeah, it's just this small school in Australia. Yeah, you guys aren't going to go anywhere. Guess he's eating those words now.
I mean, it's interesting because James Wan and Lee Wannell kind of fall into this. I mean, it's not like a trope, but it's just like a thing that happens is that a lot of directors make their first big break when they do horror because when you're a first-time director, it's really difficult to get like a big budget, and it's a lot easier to make a horror movie on a low budget than it is to make any other kind of movie on a low budget. So typically first-time directors like get their big break on a horror movie.
Sam Raimi.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Raimi made the Evil Dead. Was it the Evil Dead? Evil Dead movies, and then went on and did other things like Spider-Man and a whole bunch of other things. And like James Wan got his first big break doing, and Lee Wannell both got their big break doing Saw. Jordan Peele got his directorial break doing
Jordan
Get
Peele
Out.
was already famous though.
But not for directing, is my point. Is like he got his directorial break doing
He was
Get
already
Out.
famous for that movie Keanu.
Right.
Just kidding.
Like he broke into the directorial market doing like a low budget horror movie.
Get Out was pretty great though.
It's just a thing that happens that I think is interesting. And I guess James Wan and Lee Wannell. Proof?
They kept alluding, in all the interviews I read them, they kept alluding to a sci-fi movie they were making, and I don't know if that's still being made or if it was ever made, or because I looked up their filmography and I can't see anything relate, because they were like, yeah, it's gonna have spaceships and robots and it's gonna be set in space, and I looked up their filmography and there's nothing on there that's related to that.
Yeah, I don't think it's come to fruition yet, because I read something that said, oh yeah, we've got like 4 scripts that James Wan was talking about. Him and Lee Wan is like, yeah, we've got like 4 scripts that we've written together. We've got like an action noir movie. We've got like a cyber noir movie. We've got like a sci-fi movie. But like when and if those happen is like still up in the air. And
yeah, I gotta make those Insidious and Conjuring sequels first.
I don't know if James Wan directed The Conjuring 2.
Yeah, he did.
I think he did though.
He did The Conjuring 2, Conjuring, Insidious, and Insidious 2, and not Insidious 3.
And
Chapter
Saw
3. And
1.
Saw. And some other stuff, I guess.
And yeah, a few other movies. And Aquaman. And Fast and the Furious 7, which is apparently like the best movie of that franchise. So I guess we'll have to see if they end up making those movies. I mean, I'd be interested to see a James Wan and Lee Wannell sci-fi movie.
Sure, why not?
Oh yeah, why not? Why not? I guess that's all we have to say about Insidious 1 through 3.
Yeah, more enjoyable than I thought they were going to be.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I really wasn't looking forward to like watching these movies. Like, this is gonna suck.
We just did this because we didn't want to watch Lord of the Rings.
I mean, yes.
But it turned out for the best, I guess.
Because we kind of already watched like one kind of long trilogy this year, so I guess next year we're gonna do Lord of the Rings. Ooh boy. Yeah, so you can email us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on Insidious and Insidious 4, I guess. Did we have an email this month? Hang on, wait, I forgot now. Let me just check. Yeah, we got an email. It's one line. Let the text-to-speech take it away.
Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle was pretty good. You guys should review both movies in Zathura as a kind of board game trilogy. Steven.
Alright, yeah, so, board game trilogy, when we get desperate. Right now, we're the rules for what constitutes a trilogy for this show are so ill-defined, and we honestly just make it up month to month to just fit whatever the hell we want into this. So, maybe. No guarantees. Anyway, you can find us on Apple Podcasts and Google Play at Triple Play, and we've consolidated our YouTube channel, or at least we're going to, so we're going to consolidate it to the Trust Your Doctor YouTube channel. So look for Trust Your Doctor for now, although it may in the future be renamed Decorative Vegetable. But yeah, we just know that we're consolidating this YouTube channel into the Trust Your Doctor one.
Yep, which is what we've already done with Facebook and Twitter, because you can find us on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Check us out also on Twitter at TYD Podcast. And next month we're going to be watching Insidious: The Last Key, because there's no other Insidious material to cover. But after that, we're going to be doing Indiana Jones. But until then, the end.